Hi, everybody. This is Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing Live number 72. We're going to talk about vibrato today. Can you get vibrato naturally, or is it induced with exercises? We had uh, our time change this week, and I don't know if those of you who normally join had your time adjusted. We went to daylight savings time on Sunday, and so we are now an hour ahead of ourselves. So hopefully you got a notification that we were starting. And Sarah, hi Sarah. Sarah says she is waiting. And Sarah, you're still there? Would you let me know if you can hear me and see me okay? Well, you can't see me, I know that. Okay, so here we go. Hi. This is Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing Live number 72. And Eupadios is here. Very nice to have you with us today, Eupadios. Let me know if you can hear me and see me. That would be helpful because you couldn't see me at first. Apologize about that. Okay, so we're going to have an interesting conversation today. It's kind of in line with some of the things we've been talking about this last week because this is always a subject that keeps coming up about vibrato, anything about vibrato. But in particular, can you get vibrato naturally, or is it induced with exercises? And I'll share a question with you I had this week from one of my viewers or subscribers. I'm not sure which, but he left a really great question I'm going to share with you today. So what about you guys? Did you get vibrato naturally, or did you have to use special exercises to get it? Let me know, yes or no. Great. Epadio says he can hear me and see me clearly. You know, vibrato is one of those things that makes singing really wonderful. We in the western part of the world, at least, we've kind of grown accustomed to hearing that. And when we hear a straight tone, well, of course, I'm exaggerating that a little bit, but our ears really have become accustomed to having vibrato. It's not used all the time. In particular, rock and pop, sometimes there's no vibrato, depending on the style of the song and so forth. However, for the most part, we kind of like vibrato, even if it's subconsciously, in my opinion. Okay, so hi to Gixie Squidward. I can hear and see. Thanks. Chris, great to have you. It looks like Chris may be from England. I use exercises. It took a long time. Great. I appreciate getting your feedback. I am with you. It took me a while. In fact, I didn't have vibrato for the first 43 years of my life. And I took voice lessons when I was in high school many years ago. And this is back in 1969, 1970. Yes, that long ago. And I was in a show, or I wanted to be in a show, Camelot. And I was wanting to get the role of King Arthur, and so I started taking voice lessons because I wanted to improve my voice. And I knew I didn't have vibrato. I didn't. My friend did. My best friend, who ended up playing Lancelot, he was a really great singer, and he had vibrato, and many of the other singers around me. And I sang a lot. I was in a madrigal group for 3 years in high school. We toured Europe. The summer I graduated, the summer of 1971, we toured Europe for 3 weeks. We performed everywhere. So I was singing a lot, and I had no vibrato in my voice. And my teacher essentially said, I'm just watching the time here because we're in our pre-show show. I'll just share this with you guys. Maybe I'll share it again in a second. She said, if you're not born with vibrato, you don't have it. Well, that was a rather disheartening thing. I mean, I felt really bad about that because I just felt like I was one of those unfortunate few who was not born with that gift of vibrato. Well, and she had her master's degree from a university in vocal performance. She had an album. She was an opera singer. She had a fabulous voice, but she didn't understand vibrato because I found out that I could develop it. Anyway, okay. So Quixie said that he used exercises to develop his vibrato. I did too. Abby, hey, Abby, nice to see you with us today. Did you guys go on daylight savings time, or was it just the States? I don't know how daylight savings time works worldwide. I'm worried that some of those who come every week to our broadcast may not have gotten the time right this week because we changed in the States, almost all of the states. Some of them don't. I think Arizona stays on standard time. I wish we did too. But we have gone to daylight savings time, so we're up an hour. Hey, Berno Inferno, nice to have you with us today. So let's start. I believe it's 2 o'clock on the top of the hour. It looks like my computer is saying 2 o'clock, so welcome, everybody. This is Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing Live, number 72. And today our topic is, can you get vibrato naturally, or is it induced with exercises? So this promises to be an interesting discussion. I'm going to be talking about a really great question that was given to me this week, and this has motivated me to want to talk more about this today. So how is everyone doing today? It's a beautiful day in the state of Utah in the United States. We're actually going to be getting snow later this week, but today it's in the 60s and the sun is shining, and it's a wonderful spring, very early spring day, even though we're still officially in winter. So hi to everybody. Let me just take a couple comments here. Eupadio says that in Europe it's normally on the last Sunday of March, so apparently you guys have not gone to daylight savings time, so I'm glad you were able to make it today to the broadcast and that we didn't lose some of you because of the change in our time here. Berno Inferno says, I think I got vibrato naturally from a young age simply by copying my favorite singers who use that technique. Isn't that awesome? Berno, that's very wise of you. I think I probably could have done that, but I felt like it wasn't, because I had to like manufacture it and kind of make it happen. I thought it was wrong, and that it wasn't real vibrato, or that because of what my teacher said, that if you're not born with it, it doesn't happen. You don't have it, and so I didn't do that, and I think that's misinformation on the teacher's part. She didn't realize it was misinformation, but it made me think that I couldn't get it. So good for you, Berno. Quixie says by a long time, I mean 6 months, for it to start to kick in comfortably. Still working on it 1 year later to make it smooth. Yes, you know what? I don't think that's unusual, Quixie. For me, it took some months. And when you first start getting it, it's pretty exciting, but it's not necessarily that you have any control over it, right? And so, it took me a long time to be able to say, start it and stop it. And so, there's this arc of development of the vibrato. Joe Weston, hi Joe, nice to have you with us today. Still working on your vibrato, eh? It comes and it goes. I don't have the power to control it. Well, Joe, you will. Trust me, you can develop that. And there's Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Nice to have you with us today. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah. So I finally got here on time. Love your videos. Thanks. You're snowed in. Where are you? Blah, blah. Blah, blah. There's a song one of my students got ready for an audition. I think it's coming up. Oh, it was last Saturday. Oh, I didn't hear how it went. I had him here yesterday. I got to ask him. And he's trying out for a musical here, and it just left my mind, but it's a show based on Gershwin music. And so I gave him a song from another show based on Gershwin music. Nice Work If You Can Get It is the name of the show. And in this show, there's a song called Blah, Blah, Blah. And it's a hoot. It's very inventive, unique. And I forgot to ask him how it went. Okay, so blah, blah, where are you from? Well, where are you snowed in? Because we're supposed to get some here this week. Hopefully, I won't get it, but snowed in. Are you up in the north part of the world somewhere? Berno says, yes, it is misinformation that you can have it or you don't. You have to create it, but the creation is a little effort. So we're going to get more into that as we progress here. So I remember hearing the first time when I began studying the technique that I teach now, which is basically speech level singing. Oh, blah, blah says in the center of Vermont, so things are rough. Oh yeah, I hear you're having another nor'easter back there. I have 3 kids who live in Brooklyn, and wondering if they're too far down the coast to be affected by that. And I know Maine and Vermont were going to be. Aha, he said, it's too tired for a detailed name. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, maybe I'll just call you BB, huh? How's that? Anyway, I started studying this technique, and our teacher, this was after a seminar, a workshop with Seth Riggs. She had come into town, and so I started studying with her, and I said, well, I don't have vibrato. She said, well, you can develop vibrato. And I can't remember what I said, but I was skeptical because I was 43 and all my life believed that if you weren't born with it, you don't have it. Let me share with you a question that I got, and from a thoughtful question. I really appreciated this. Let me adjust it here. Oh, okay. It looks like it's going to be all right. I think that should be. You may have to enlarge your screen. I hope that's clear to read. But this came from a subscriber or just a viewer who goes by MX. Very good question. He said, "Hi, Chuck. I hear about another method of vibrato, and it is that it occurs naturally in the voice and happens naturally with proper vocal technique, i.e. proper breath support and a lifted soft palate. But I see that you're teaching it in such a way that it is a learned fluctuation in pitch rather than a natural pulsation. I was wondering what you think of this other idea of vibrato occurring naturally from proper vocal technique rather than trying to induce and create it." I think this is an awesome question, and it really caused me some reflection, and I'm not sure that I even answered it as well as I could. So I wanted to talk more about it now. So the question is good from the standpoint of, well, maybe I'm going to put it back up here so I can look at it. I really appreciated the idea of being able to develop the voice. So he said, I hear about another method of vibrato, and it is that it occurs naturally in the voice and happens naturally with proper vocal technique and proper breath support and a lifted soft palate. And so in many ways, I think it's true that with proper technique, vibrato will begin to occur naturally. What is proper technique? I felt like I was getting proper technique when I was in high school from a teacher who understood the voice, and yet I didn't get it, and so and yet, but he talks, and this question that came was, if you had the proper breath support and a lifted soft palate, then that it would begin to come out in a natural way rather than having to generate some other kinds of exercises to induce it. Well, we spent a lot of time on breath support, and I thought that was proper. That was proper breath support in my early lessons. And I don't remember having a discussion on the soft palate. So I don't think she ever really talked about that. It was actually, I thought were very good lessons. I think it helped me a great deal. And there were 3 or 4 other students in our madrigal group that was studying with her also, and they did really well in their singing. So I felt like she was a good teacher, but my vibrato didn't come by itself. And maybe it was because she told me that if I didn't have it naturally, that you don't have it. And that may be the reason why I just believed that you couldn't develop it, was because of that, that bit of information. I don't know, I'd be interested if any of you who are with us today had ever been told that by any of your teachers. Let's take a couple other questions here. Bruno Inferno says, yes, it's a misinformation that you have it or you don't. You have to create it, but the creation is a little different. Okay, we talked about that a little bit. Jason asks, how do you control vibrato? How can you control vibrato? Well, let me ask you this, Jason. Can you tell me how you blink your eyes? How do you blink your eyes? Well, my guess is you just say, well, I just blink them. Watch. See? Now, if you were a scientist, you might be able to tell me what kinds of tendons and muscles and nerve impulses and so forth are going into it. But I can't really explain to you exactly how I control vibrato. However, I can show you, I can demonstrate it like I do demonstrating, blinking my eyes. And I'm not sure that even if I could tell you which muscle and which tendon and which ligament and and so forth, I don't know if that would help you. So in a minute, maybe I can show you how I control vibrato and see if that would help. Okay, so we'll come back to more of that answer in a second. BB says, I've always had a problem with my vibrato and thought it might also be because I was breathy, this brings up a really great point, and it's kind of referring back to the question that we started out with, and that is proper technique. So if we go back to this question, and it says proper breath support, lifted soft palate, proper vocal technique is what I wanted to get to. I think that most singing teachers would agree that proper vocal technique includes, or could be maybe even defined as a voice that is in balance. So there's the larynx is balanced, so it's not riding high or being pushed down too low. So the larynx is rather at speech level. You have adequate breath support, adequate breath supply to the vocal cords, and that the vocal cords are also balanced with the air and the muscle of the cord itself, so that it's not under contracted where you have lots of air escaping. It's not over contracted where it's just too tight. But you've got this contracted, just right contracted cord structure that's balancing well with the air, interacting well with the airflow, which is pretty much where the speech level. And if you speak normally and comfortably, then this would be a balanced voice. And so in that regard, I really feel that maybe BB's got a good point here, that part of the problem he had was that he wasn't quite balanced, that there was too much air escaping his vocal, escaping through the vocal cords, and as a result, he was getting a breathy tone, and that causes some other things to happen. Oftentimes when we have the breathy tone, the larynx comes up because we're trying to help get a stronger tone. We're kind of starting to add a little bit of extra squeeze to it so we can get a little bit more tone quality and less breathiness. And so if the voice is not in balance, I think that, and this is, I've kind of come to this about myself, I don't feel like my voice was in balance. I think I had more tension than I needed. I think my larynx was up higher, and I tended to pull my chest voice high because I didn't know how to bridge. So because I didn't know how to bridge, I think that threw some other things off. And so I didn't have a balanced voice, and that's a very important part of good technique. So I think that the point is kind of illustrated here by what BB says, that perhaps it's because he was too breathy, or in other words, his voice wasn't quite in balance. Eupadio says, I hear vibrato as a smooth cyclical fluctuation of pitch, not strictly above or below a central pitch, but rather around it, in a manner that places the main pitch in the center of this fluxation. Very nice, Eupadio. I think that's a really great observation and very interesting. Jason, hi. Okay, nice to have you with us today, Jason. JT, Jason, Tejeda. Okay. Now, so I do depart a little bit from the my question that was given to me, and that was he asked if we really needed to have a lifted soft palate, and if we'd have proper breath control, and lifted soft palate, that probably this is a part of what he would define as proper vocal technique. Now, this is where I kind of depart from and would, in a way, disagree with this suggestion. I don't think that you get a balanced voice by trying to manipulate the soft palate. So whenever too often teachers say, lift your palate, but many times a student doesn't understand how to lift the palate without introducing other tensions in the voice, like creating tension with the tongue, or with the extrinsic muscles in the effort to, or maybe pushing the larynx down when it shouldn't be, and so forth. So my bias is that I would not give direction like that to a student, no matter what I'm doing in any fashion. I wouldn't tell them to lift the palate. I would maybe give exercises that might cause that to happen, but I wouldn't say, lift the soft palate. And so the proper technique, well, I got to, in all honesty, I think that it's probably with some special exercises you can develop vibrato and still not have proper technique. It may not be optimal yet, but I think that so I'm going to ask this question. What do you guys think? it looks to me like the majority of you would say that you need some special exercises versus just versus having a good technique, good breath support, and raised palate. That seems to be what everybody is kind of saying here. If you haven't shared your thoughts on it, I'd really be curious to hear what any comments you might have. Jason, thank you. It's a Spanish name. I would think it's probably Tieta, something like that. So hi Chuck. It's great picture quality. It seems you got hardware upgrade. Yes, I did. I'm using new software. It's called vMix, and And I also have invested in a PC computer rather than the Mac. And the vMix is built for PCs. I'm making a technical diversion here just to explain that. And I actually still have the same camera, but I've got the ability to make some adjustments now on the camera. It's just the C920, Logitech C920. So I'm going to be trying to spiffy up my broadcasts and make them a little bit better over time. But the Mac the broadcast overloaded the video card in the Macintosh, and it slowed everything down. The audio got all messed up. You know about that if you've been watching. Whereas on a PC, the video card is not integrated with the motherboard, and so we can put it can take a lot of juice. It can take a lot of the broadcast and still not affect the overall product. So it works so much better. So thanks for noticing. I appreciate that. Hi, Victoria. Could Stevie Nicks have as much vibrato as she did naturally? Could Stevie Nicks have as much vibrato as she did naturally? Well, I'm sorry, I'm at a disadvantage. I don't know about Stevie Nicks and whether, I don't know how to answer that question. Viru, is singing with particular techniques always superior to natural singing, or sometimes going away from techniques is necessary to introduce or express certain emotions? Well, the quick answer, Viru, and by the way, thanks for joining us today. Really nice to have you here. I think that you have to have technique as the foundation, and the technique needs to be so well established. And in this case, I'm going to say that technique needs to include your ability to bridge from chest to head voice, and to be able to lean in on and be able to sing into that, and to be able to have that mix so well established that you don't have to think about it. Then you can add other things to what you're singing, and it won't knock the technique out. So I think as long as what you're doing is still safeguarding a good technique, I think it's fine. Particularly in musical theater, things get really wild and crazy sometimes with the characters, and you need to have your technique well established, and from character to character it will change, and so you need your technique foundation very well established, and then you don't have to think about it. So you can express the emotions, you can express whatever you're doing, as long as the technique is there, and it's so well established you don't have to think about it. Then I think it works really well to allow your emotions, allow the feeling, allow your expression. Maybe I don't know what else to add to it, but now it's possible, I think, to throw yourself out of good technique, and then you can. And the danger with that, in my mind, is that you can begin to abuse vocally, and I don't think that's a good idea. So I don't think vocal abuse is ever a good idea. All right, so Yes, I don't know how to pronounce your name, and it's written in another language, but I appreciate your comment. A vibrato is more technical thing than natural. For example, in Baroque music, you need no vibrato, and you don't do it. Okay, great comment. BB says, for me, I find that a balance between exercises and techniques helps with things. I start with a few exercises and pick up techniques. Jason says, can anyone learn how to have proper vibrato? Jason, for some, it's very challenging, but so far, I've not had a student who was not able to develop the vibrato with special exercises. So, I want to make a comment that so vibrato, if this were the pitch right here, if the pitch was here, then it really spins above. It spins above the pitch. Now, if it starts to dip down into it and down below it, we start getting a kind of a wobble. So, when I do vibrato, when I teach vibrato, I like to keep people thinking of it being above your pitch, and it tends to do what our commenter had said a minute ago, and I can't remember who mentioned it, but so if I said ah, now if I said ah, and it dipped down below the pitch, you can hear that it's pulling the pitch down, whereas this spinning above the pitch seems to help it, seems to heal the vocal line. It seems to round it out. Ah, I think I've been told, and if I recall correctly, I've heard Seth Riggs talk about this spin per second is around 6 to 7 per second, or per second cycles. And if it gets too slow, it starts to develop more of a wobble. And you can see these on the internet. But we now if I said so there's another thing called tremolo, and that is it's too fast. It has kind of a bleeding sound, depending on the pitch. It sounds to me like sometimes like a little lamb. I don't do that very well. There's some other people on YouTube that can really show what a tremolo sounds like. So we get tremolo if it's going too fast, and we get a wobble if it's going too slow. And so but we're really not, so this conversation today, I really want to talk a little bit about I think the truth is that I know this for a fact, I get little children that come into my studio. I mean to tell you, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, I've had them as young as 5, I guess. And this little girl got up there and she just had this wonderful little vibrato. Where did she get that? Well, I don't know. She was born with it. And maybe she listened to someone else said they listened to people and mimic them. And maybe she did that. Maybe she was listening to some music on the radio or on YouTube, or had a CD that she was listening to and just picked that up. So, but some people seem to have kind of a natural way of doing it, and they always have. And I can say, can you put some vibrato in there? And they say, sure. Others of us, and I am one of those who did not have vibrato. If a teacher said to me, can you put some vibrato in it? I would say, I don't have vibrato. And so that straight tone, oh my, When I think about not ever getting that vibrato, it makes me sad to feel like there are people out there who still think that because they weren't born with it, they can't get it. So overall, based on the question that I was asked, I feel as if that the way that if you have it naturally, good for you. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have, ideal technique, but you do have vibrato, and you can learn the ideal technique. So I think that it's not necessarily exclusive. That is, if everybody who has vibrato also has, really great technique. Going back to this question that was asked, it happens naturally with proper vocal technique. Well, there are a lot of people who have naturally, whose technique is not ideal. So I think it's a little bit of a simplification, but I'm pretty sure that, well, I really don't know. I think you'd have to do a study on this and just, take a couple hundred people and have them show the vibrato and show their technique, and then maybe create some kind of a measurement of some sort to see whether or not they have proper technique, therefore they have vibrato, or they don't have proper technique. But my sense is that people can develop vibrato and still not have proper technique, and that you can develop vibrato and not have perfect, and you can develop it if you didn't have it before and still not have perfect technique through exercises that induce the vibrato. It can be as simple as this. And then, just shake your hands in front of you to get the vocal folds to kind of get that pulse inside. I have taught a lot of kids to do that, and guess what happens? They start to feel it, and then I have them stop shaking their hands, but keep the feeling going. And their eyes light up, and they say, "Wow!" And once they start feeling it, then they can start to reproduce that in their own voice without shaking their hands. I've had some adults do the same thing, and so it's just something that simple can do it. And I've done couple videos on other techniques. So I think it can be induced, and I think it's a fair thing to do. And the point is that once you learn it, then it becomes natural. I don't think about creating it anymore in my voice. It's become natural for me. At first I did. I had to start it and stop it, so to speak. But over time, it becomes natural. Someone mentioned that they're still working on developing that, and it will come. It absolutely will come. So, and it is interesting that and it was mentioned here by AC that in Baroque you don't use vibrato. I don't have a tune in mind for Baroque. There's a Latin descant that the Padre does in Man of La Mancha, and it's something like De profum de amaradita Domine. I think he's still doing vibrato, but if I did it straight tone, De profum amaradita di do Domine Domine. You could stop that vibrato for certain kinds of style. You hear this a lot in pop or in Broadway and so forth, where they'll have this big finish. Just say it's Beauty and the Beast. La Let the world be done with me. So they hold a straight tone and they start that vibrato, and you know, so it's great if you can learn to control it and add something like that creates a little bit more of a style and so forth. I don't think you want to hold straight tones for a long time or overdo it, because vibrato is very healthy. It's a very good thing for the voice. Okay, enough of me talking. We need to kind of wrap this up in the next 4 or 5 minutes, so let me get back to some of your questions. VR says, thanks, Chuck. And I was wondering, what instruments do you play? You know what? I'm mainly a singer. I can play some chords on the piano. And when I was little, I played. You know, I can still remember that much. I took piano for 10 years when I was from age 50 to age 60. And I practiced an hour a day. Some cases I practiced 2 hours a day. And so I can play a few church hymns if I practice and work on my fingering and so forth. And then I took some jazz, which I loved, but I needed to drop out to start working on my YouTube channel. But and so I can play some chords, you know, and do some rough accompanying. But and I can strum the guitar a little bit. You know, I know some basics in the guitar. I don't play it really. I did when I was a kid. And I could play a little harmonica, just a little bit. So Abby Hips, I would appreciate it if you did a live chat on how not to sing through your nose. That's very important to me. Okay, Abby, that's an interesting proposition. Let me just throw something out right now. I've asked this question of Mr. Riggs, and his comment was primarily the nasality is caused by a larynx coming up, by the larynx rising up. And I think that also affects the position of the tongue as well. So you might want to try some exercises, Abby, that would pull the larynx down, just as a way to try and get rid of the nasality. So in your exercises, you might want to try just doing the you start to, if when you're singing you're feeling like it's going nasal, substitute a dopey gee, like a really stupid gee, whatever the tune is. I can't, and I'm not getting a tune in my mind, but take a dopey gee, and if you're saying gee 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 gee, and overdo it, over exaggerate it to drive that larynx down, and then go back a little more towards normal until and see if that helps. Okay, see if that helps. The sound has to go past the nasal cavity, but just not into the nasal cavity. We don't want it in there. So another one is you could hold your nose and try and speak, not have it go into your nose. And here's one last tip, Abby. Pretend like you're going to say, in fact, just try and say, or was it Abby that was asking me that? Ka, ka, ka. Say ka. Now do it backwards. So say ka, but inhale. Ka, ka, ka. And then sing your line with that same feeling. Ka. Backwards ka, ka. For those of you who are trying this, guess what's happening? But I didn't tell her to do anything. Just do a backwards ka, ka. See what happens. That's not a speech level thing. I learned that from somebody else. Okay, now, Marnix. Hi, Marnix. I don't think I've said hello. I'd like to know if it's possible to develop head voice to be indistinguishable from chest voice. Often when I listen to music, male singers, it sounds as if they're rarely singing in head voice. It may be that they're not. They might be pulling chest. It varies, you know, from singer to singer. But yeah, I think it's pretty possible to get such a strong head voice that people wonder, how can you do that in chest? I remember one of my teachers said his daughter went back to New York and she took she just had a connection all the way up to the high G, and he said, I've never heard anybody belt the G before. Well, she wasn't belting, she was mixing. It was such a strong mix, he thought she was, you know, belting it. So, but for me, it took a long time to be able to have a pretty strong sound in the bridge. That's a mix. It's head voice. It's, well, so a mix in the bridge, and then same coordination on the A. And but it took me a while to get that. So I think the answer is yes. Daniel says, great vibrato trick. Never seen that one before. Oh, good. All right. Thanks, Daniel. Abby says, me too, Marnix. All right. So, you know, we'll maybe do another broadcast sometime on the same topic. This is one we've done several. I've done several of them, how to get a stronger head voice and have it, you know, get more chest-like quality, more chest presence. Not necessarily pulling chest voice up, but just more chest presence in the voice. Berna said, I agree. Proper singing technique, not pulling chest without tension, so forth, and developing vibrato are different things. Great. Thanks, Berno. Appreciate your OS. Planning on meeting up here in about 20 minutes. I'm not even going to try and say the name of your studio. Osminum? Osminium. Osminium. How about that? Osmium. Osmium Studios. You'll have to correct me today. Michael, hello. Nice to have you here. Great to have you join us. Daniel said, Chuck, would you say that mixed voice is a head voice coordination? Yes, yeah. So once I'm in it, I really am not changing anything. So once you're in that, it's that's why it's so vital to learn to bridge, because it's fundamentally the very same thing. Berno said, I used to delayed vibrato most of the time when I'm singing. I use delayed vibrato most of the time when singing. You know, as long as it's a choice and it's not something that you have to do, okay. Great to use for long notes. Okay. All right, everybody. So wonderful to, whoops, I think I just spiked the microphone there, sorry. So wonderful to see you today, and thanks for a lot of great comments, and I hope this has been somewhat informative. I think the answer is that for those of us, no matter what the quality of our technique has been or is currently, you may not have vibrato, and that we can learn vibrato with special exercises. We can induce the vibrato, and then we can develop that vibrato and use it liberally and expertly in our singing. So this is Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing Live. You can sing higher with beauty, confidence, and power, and vibrato. I'll see you inside the next video. Thanks, everybody. Yes, bye-bye.